Alright, so now we're ready to begin the shading process for our drawing. So the first thing we're going to do is ink in our line drawing to make everything permanent. So we're going to go ahead and get our drafting pen kit and take out the 0.3 size pen. And this is the one we're going to use to outline everything. Now obviously the inking is going to make everything here permanent, so before we go ahead and do that, you might want to go over your drawing and see if there's any changes you want to make, and feel free to erase things and redraw it to make sure that you're completely happy with your line drawing before we make it all permanent. So assuming that you're perfectly happy with your line drawing, we can start the inking process. Now I know it can be a little intimidating to put a pen to your drawing, especially after you've been working so hard on it. So if you want to, if you're nervous about it, you can go ahead and make a photocopy of your pencil drawing and then practice on the copy until you feel comfortable before you go into your actual drawing. And if you don't have a photocopier, I've included a scan image of this drawing here that you can print out and practice with that. Or if you want to, you can just take a scratch piece of paper and play around with the pen until you get the hang of it. And it's really not as difficult as you think. Just about 10 or 15 minutes of practice and you're gonna get the hang of it real quick. So let's go ahead and work on this roof area right here. So we're gonna start by outlining the roof, and to do the roof I'm not gonna be using very long continuous straight lines. Instead I'm just gonna be using these shorter strokes here to create the lines. And it's okay if not all your lines are perfectly straight. In fact, that's actually just gonna give your drawing more character and makes it look better. So just relax and keep the pressure on your pen sort of light, and whenever you feel comfortable you can turn your paper so that it matches the natural movement of your hand better. So we're just gonna go through all the lines on the roof. And when doing these boards here, I'm going to revert back to a long, smooth, continuous line stroke. And I'm just going to try to keep my hand as steady as possible. And even for the chimney, I'm still going to head and use these short strokes here. I think it's going to add more character to the house, but you can use a ruler if that makes you feel more comfortable. And I'll go ahead and leave out the brick lines for now. And now to put in these horizontal lines on the roof, I'm going to turn my paper this way to make it more comfortable. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the roof area. Now I went ahead and left out the windows because we're gonna use a ruler to draw those in later. So now let's move on to the body of the house. So let's start with this bush right here first. Again, we're just gonna use a very shaky hand movement. And one tip for this, if you want to get your strokes really fine, is to really tighten up your hand, make it really rigid, and then sort of shake it very slightly as you're tracing over the bush. And that's going to give you a very nice fine strokes that mimic the looks of tiny little leaves. And just sort of lift up your pen every once in a while. And now let's draw in the bush over here. And let's do this bush over here. Okay, so now let's draw in these flowers down here. Okay, so now let's work on this main body of the house. And I'll use my ruler to help me draw in the beams here. So because the beams are so small, any crookedness in my lines will be very obvious. So that's why I use the ruler to help guide me. The same principle applies for the windows as well. So let's go ahead and use our ruler and ink in this door while we're at it. Alright, so since that looks so nice, let's go ahead and ink in all the rest of our windows as well. So now let's move on to this area over here. And once again for this one, I'm going to use my ruler to give me the most amount of precision possible. And for this area right here, I'll actually use my free hand to give it some character. And now we'll ink in this part over here. Okay, and now let's ink in all these details here in the front yard. Okay, so now let's ink in all these tiles right here. Alright, so next we're going to take this 0.05 pen, so it's going to be much thinner than our 0.3 pen, and we're going to use this to ink in our brick line because we want our brick lines to be more subtle and not overwhelming in our drawing, so that's why we're going to use this thinner pen. And of course I'm going to be using my ruler to help me keep all the lines very straight. Okay, so once you ink in the horizontal lines, I'm going to take the same pen and I'm just going to draw in straight lines up and down to create the brick form, like that. And then for the second line, I'm just going to misalign it a little bit so that we have that alternating pattern for the brick. Okay, so that's what that looks like, and now we're going to do the exact same thing throughout the rest of the house. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the inking process. So now the last step is to just take your eraser and clean up any straggling pencil mark that you might have in your drawing, and we're ready to move on to the next stage.